Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Hello. 2024. Happy New Year.
Good to see you all. Take the time if you like to look around, see who's here with us today. Well, thanks to everyone for coming. Good to see you all. Let's get started. So, taking time to start to let your eyes come to close, settle in to your seated posture by starting to receive the experiences of the body. Rather than simply manage or manipulate. Starting to receive the sensations of sound that may be arising, passing in your environment. Noticing that while they may have many different qualities than the physical sensations of the body, there is also something they share in their motion, changeability. Can start to notice the activity of the mind itself. Sometimes just this quality of awareness of the body or awareness of sound, the recognition of these phenomena, the relationship. Sometimes we notice its own experiences, its own phenomena arising, not so much in relationship to the body, to sound, smell, taste, sight, but its own activity, conjurings of thoughts and images, opinions. the voice that we think of as our self, other fleeting phenomena. And this too, we can see how different it is in many ways from sounds, visual impressions, bodily sensations. Different textures, tones. It's of a different fabric. But sometimes we also can see the shared nature of the mental and emotional world. There's some impact we can have, there's some directing, managing, manipulating. But we also see that it's largely out of our control. Images, thoughts, other phenomena, knowings arising and passing based on conditions. Our influence is real, but fleeting. And we see the joy, we see the turmoil of the confluence of all of these phenomena arising and passing in this present moment. Sounds, emotions, bodily sensations, smells, tastes, thought patterns, seeing. And sometimes we see the possibility of peace within all of this movement through the qualities of mind that are observant, clear, knowing, caring, strong but agile, gentle, firm, simply by knowing and noting with clarity, kindness. Whatever phenomena is presently arisen, how it changes, how it disappears. We slowly build the capacity to be at peace without clinging, rejecting, ignoring. And sometimes this is enough. Just sitting in the midst of all of this change, these different qualities, textures, fabrics of sensory experience. The mind alighting on each one as it arises and passes. No need to manipulate or change. Control. The genuine interest in these natures is enough to keep us peaceful amid the arising of unpleasant, painful sensations, the dissipation of pleasant ones, the dullness of neutral ones. A genuine investigation into phenomena on their own terms. It's not heavy or stubborn, gentle, agile, fluid. And sometimes it's overwhelming. Phenomena are arising and passing so quickly, and it's so hard to have the attention keep up. You get frustrated, caught in our whirlpools. And so we recognize the beautiful value of gathering the attention in a smaller field of experience. Is it more manageable to have the field of sound as the primary object of our attention, not rejecting that which is not sound or ignoring it, but placing a subtle priority, bringing sound to the forefront, attuning to its moment by moment change. So that we have some sense of an ability to notice these deeper truths about this part of our lived experience, knowing that they will translate to the bigger picture. Or do we bring the attention into the body, prioritizing physicality as the primary field of attention. Or even more narrowly at the area around the abdomen as the breath naturally moves in and out in its own uncontrolled rhythm. Or where the hands are making contact with the body. We see the same range of pressure, warmth, coolness, tingling, moisture, dryness. This soft mental noting of what we observe, just helping us keep connected in this current of change. Letting yourselves explore what's skillful, the conditions of the mind in any given moment. Do we anchor the attention in a primary object, field? Do we open the attention to all observable phenomena internally and externally? Trusting that insight can happen anywhere, anytime. The mindfulness connects genuinely with any one of these natural phenomena. Just trying our best to be present for when that connection unfolds. So Michelle and I thought that it would be good to take the time again today to just see if anyone has any questions about your practice that we might be able to help with. Um, if you've been joining us for a time, you know it can span the whole spectrum of what that might mean. And yeah, we just want to make sure that we can be a resource to anyone who may have, particular questions, particular challenges, interesting things happening in your practice that you might want some reflection on. So, the best way again is at the bottom of your screen on the reactions button. Um, you can click on that, and there's a raise hand option, so we can see that you have a question. If that isn't working, you can just type into the chat that you have a question, and we'll call on you. Or you can flail your arms around, and we'll probably see you at some point. Victor. Oh, hold on. I have to change the. Okay, you should be able to. There you go.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted.
Great. Yep.
You hear me? Sort of a basic question about what we all know. Nice to see you both and be held.
Hi, Victor.
Hi, Michelle. I've found a new spark in practice by focusing on the dantian below the belly as a safe place. Similarly to when you used sound as a safe place and then venture out from there. And yeah, it's sort of the dantian. And then name what field I'm going to, whether it's to sound or to feeling or emotion. And from there, I can see my anxiety with more stability. So any comment or thing to look out for?
Yeah, it's great. It's it's amazing when we find some place, some connection, some object, something that that feels like we have a sense of sort of security there, and um, just as you described, like kind of using it as a home base to protect ourselves and then to move out from and come back to. And I'd be curious of like when you go to, I'm not familiar with the name Dantian or the kind of concept, but when you go there, what do you notice?
Neutrality, it's lower belly, right where the breath begins. It's sort of like right above the sexual center. There's sort of neutrality, maybe a little bit of belly movement, but it's a spot. It's not the rising and falling.
Right. Right. So even in that, it's like I get, I can tell you have a sense of, a little bit of the difference of what kinds of relationship we have with something that we might call an anchor or a primary object, and the kind of some of the implications of that. But I'll just elaborate since it's, it sounds like you're, I know you're kind of aware of it, but I'll just sort of say a little and see, what Michelle might want to add to the in a kind of in the lineage of Vipassana practice that we inherited and are a part of, there is an emphasis on using a primary object that is moving, right? But it's this dance of like, what is something that's relatively neutral, as you're describing, right? That's not really evocative, right? We're not trying to use as our anchor like some horrible pain in our abdomen or in our knee or something, or an emotional pain, right? It's like, what is something that's relatively neutral, but that's also changing, and so that you have a sense of a place where you feel somewhat safe and protected, but that also in and of itself is going to reveal the sort of insight truths of things, right? That things are all changing, that things are undependable, and that there's hardship in that undependability, that there isn't a core, kind of essential self in, any phenomena. So the idea of like the breath as an anchor or sound as an anchor usually is still rooted in the sense of like that we're looking for something that might be not so evocative for us, but that is still moving and changing and giving us sort of insight into that. And to recognize that that's really different for different people. It's partly why we offer different anchors. It's for some people the breath is just not going to be safe and not going to feel like a place that is comfortable to hang out in. And so sound, something outside of the body, can be a better um, anchor for many people. So that's the sort of like framework that we are most steeped in. And there are other frameworks of Vipassana practice that are totally legitimate and traditional and beautiful, where there is more of a sense of finding a more fixed object of attention um, that is that doesn't need to be changing in itself. That we use something more neutral and more safe. Um, Often it's conceptual, uh, where you find that sense of sort of stability and concentration and protection, and then from there you explore the changing nature of things, right? So it sounds like my guess is it sounds like you're doing a little bit of both. You are noticing that there is movement, it might be subtle. There's breath, it's like you get that it's happening in this area. There's also a place where maybe it feels like a relief that there's not a lot of activity and that feels safe and that's a place that feels like the mind can kind of concentrate a little bit, and that from there, as you've already described, that you are moving into other things, moving into emotion, moving into other phenomena that are changing, that are more wild. And so I don't have any concern about it for you. It's more just that it's important to know what we're doing when we're doing it, and to understand that there are skillful ways of doing like a range of method and approaches, but to get the difference is also meaningful um, because we can the thing that most would say that like people are the concern would be that we only focus on a place that's unchanging, and we never learn to be with we only find safety in the sort of something that seems unchanging, and we don't ever learn to sort of stretch and be with the wildness of phenomena also. You're not doing that, and so I don't have that concern for you, but it's important to recognize that you've like entered a cool thing and it's different, and you're finding juice in it, and you're finding protection, and you're finding a refuge from which you can then explore. It sounds great, really. It'll be,
It,
yeah.
it, it in itself moves a tiny bit with the breath, and I'm pulled out to other spheres so often, it's not a moving thing. And I'm
Mm,
very committed to being with flowing things. But as you know, for me, um, anxiety, depression, wild thoughts have been so uncontrollable. I needed that safe space, but I think, yeah, you hit it. I'm not in danger of attaching to a still place.
I know it's too late. It's too late for you. You have too much practice under your belt. That's great. That's really cool. Yeah. I don't know, Michelle, you want to,
Hmm.
yeah.
I'm just so happy for you, Victor.
Mm.
It's new, but thank you. Yeah, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, you've been through a long haul, so that you understand what you're doing is so great. And I think I would just say that you've accepted so deeply how the practice works for you. So you've made the practice work for you. And, for me, it's always just that, I guess it's the reminding and reassuring that some karmic knots are a kind of quicksand, so that when they are like quicksand, the reminder will be that to underestimate how much time you're spending in the anxiety or the depression, so that the idea would be that you take that homeopathic dose, but you take a little bit of it so that you cut through that sense of, oh, this time I'm really gonna nail it, right? Or this time I'm gonna I know you've been at it so long, you might have like lost that idea entirely, which is great. But it's just that sense of actually, when you can do this even somewhat skillfully, you're actually getting stronger. You're getting a better relationship with the anxiety, getting a better relationship with the depression. And if you overestimate yourself, then you're falling back into the aversion to it or the fear of it, and you lose that ability to strengthen. So, like, I would say that I would really treat this time period in your practice very gingerly, like just with great appamada, with great care, that you keep strengthening the anchor, keep strengthening other phenomena, being with, the relationship with being with all that. And then that the instruction is really clear. In the Mahasi method, which is what I've loved, actually, the clarity of it, that you connect the attention with what's predominant until it no longer is predominant, or if you're getting caught in it. It's kind of amazing, really. And so, like, that ability to take when you have a quicksand karma, or chronic pain in general is a quicksand karma, physical, mental, or emotional, then it's that ability to go, okay, actually maybe my willpower could do more, but the mindfulness is the mindfulness has done its job, and it's time to back off. So that's a never-ending vast exploration that I would encourage you to know, that you can't do that perfectly, but you're doing it really well. Like, I just like have to say again, Jesse and I are so happy, like deeply happy, that you found your way with this. It's not easy. And sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Yeah. Mm.
Thank you.
I saw another hand raised
Yeah.
and it
Mhm.
disappeared, and I can't remember who it
It's
was.
Marcello.
Oh, Marcelo.
Marcello. Yeah, Marcello. Marcello.
Yeah, hi. I raised my hand kind of by accident. I'm new. I've never been here before, so thank you so much. I really appreciate being here with you all and that you're all here. Thanks so much. I'm interested in the Mahasi method of meditation, so I'm just learning a little bit. Um, Something that comes up for me a lot is laziness, like nodding off. And so that's something that came up just now in the meditation. I'm wondering what sort of suggestions you have to um, for when that happens, because it takes me away into like thoughts. You know, I think I think part of it is doing a lot of exercise lately, so maybe that's why I'm feeling tired, and so this laziness kind of nodding off. My mind will easily drift until something like some other, I guess, like object, like my mind lights up on and takes me back into the moment.
I'm sure no one here knows what you're talking about. Yeah. Michelle, you want to start?
Yeah,
Or you
sure.
wanna...
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's great.
this is something we all work with our whole life of practice. So it's basically usually low energy. That's all it is. And um, often, there's no cookie cutter answer to any of this, but there can be suggestions of things to try, and some of them work better for us than others. But I think the most important thing is accepting low energy. So that this all boils down to intention. And so that if sleepiness arises, laziness tends to have a judgment in it that is not necessarily helpful. I think that just low energy or sleepiness comes up, drifting, and if the if you're applying a technique or anything to do with that, to do with it, if it's coming out of um, aversion or attachment, you're just reinforcing aversion and attachment, and you're not really getting a relationship with the low energy. So um, often culturally, most of us have been conditioned to not like low energy. It's just we sit down to practice and we want it to be clear. So the acceptance of it it's actually a very deep practice where if you're not taking the sleepiness personally, you're getting liberated. If you're seeing it as impermanent and unreliable, not you, like not self, it's like that's it, the experience in meditation does not matter. It's how you're relating to it. So we place great value on sleepiness as much as we would happiness or peace, or you're getting a witness. You're trying to get a witnessing relationship with whatever's happening, whatever is appearing. So if for example, if you notice aversion to it, actually that can be energizing. If you're noticing wanting clarity, that can be energizing. But there's, really, we could spend hours explaining two different ways to work with sleepiness. So it's like you kind of have to, sometimes it's better. What I'm saying is that you work with the mental states that are arising in reaction to it. So that's one way to work with it that is often actually can be energizing. And kind of on a basic level, once you kind of look at what's going on and see if you can accept it, usually giving your attention more to do rather than trying to stay on a fixed object will usually be more energizing because low sleepiness is often um, a lot of concentration. Not always, but often a lot of concentration and not enough energy. So you've got this imbalance going on. And so you're not necessarily wanting to move into more concentration. So a very interesting Mahasi technique is to bring your attention to your left shoulder and notice a few sensations or none, and move to the right hip. Note a few sensations or none. Move to the left knee. Notice a few sensations or none. Move to the right foot. No sensations or some. You notice and you move. You notice and you move. And then you go back. So it would be right shoulder, left hip, right knee, left foot, right knee, left hip, right shoulder. And you see like that, that's going to bring some kind of often sometimes it'll bring energy. And if the intention is to just kind of see if you can be more skillfully with what's happening versus to reinforce aversion to sleepiness, it's actually can be helpful. And then if that's kind of still bringing some driftiness, you do it with your eyes open. And then if you really want to keep going at it, you stand up and do it with your eyes open. I'm not kidding. There's lots of ways to play with these things. And usually by that point, if there's gonna be a shift, there's usually gonna be a shift. And if not, in the Mahasi method, they do say graceful surrender. So you sit down and you nod, and it's not permanent. Eventually it'll clear. I don't know if you want to say anything, Josie, but it's kind of one of my specialties.
Oh, thank you.
Sometimes you feel like you need a neck brace, Yeah, no, I really that particular method I feel like is such a good thing to learn for sleepiness or in general, just the moving of the object, different touch points throughout the body. So that is just such a it's so skillful, and that's one of the things you just realize about Mahasi of just this amazing toolbox, that the tradition has and that he was very versatile with, and we're so grateful for, that range of tools, and maybe just it's like some of it is like if there's low energy and you're trying to just like slam on the gas, you just know it's like it's not going to hook. And so you kind of have to shift down into like third gear, second gear, first gear. And it's like that's sort of what that's doing. It's like rather than trying to kind of like focus on one thing and just keep slipping off, it's like it's gentle. You spend a few moments here, a few moments there, but it's just like you start to, the mind, you're not trying to force it into a a method, an approach that it can't get to at that level of energy, and so you and you just go down, and it's like, okay, actually here you can keep the pace, and if there's enough movement, sometimes like Michelle's saying, it gets the energy going. And I do think this piece around, ultimately it isn't about fighting it, that Vipassana is about coming to terms and coming to understand the full range of human experience, not just always being at kind of perfect um, you have to be so careful about the pressure of perfection, especially that that conflating of laziness with low energy. Laziness is real and it's not the same thing, and that sense of like that it's our fault, or that we should be at optimal everything all the time is not realistic. And I think that it's not helpful, and it doesn't lead to liberation, right? There is also this sense of sleepiness arises. It's part of existence. And what is our relationship? Can we be interested in it? Can we recognize that in those times there's calm? And that's a factor of awakening that's so valued, but we often don't value it when it comes also without a lot of energy. But you can see that even in those places, there are, like Michelle's saying, there's often concentration, there's calm, there's sometimes or not equanimity. There might be things there that are present that we're not valuing. And so it's that sense of like exploring all that's happening, not just the problem that we think we're kind of focused on. And it is sometimes, it's just always helpful that it's like, the chances are when we're dying, we're going to be low energy. And are we going to call ourselves lazy? Are we going to like give ourselves a hard time about it? Or are we going to like feel into it, settle into that reality, that's out of our control? And so that's practice.
There's a monk at the monastery at Chaswa Monastery in Burma that we've taught at for many years, and he spoke a little English, and he helped us a lot running the retreats, and um, we had a running joke with each other. Like it was so much fun. Like you had to wait for the right moment and the right time, but every once in a while, I'd call him lazy, and we would just laugh. It was like the worst insult like you could do for both of us. Like we were both the type that calling each other lazy was like, no, not that, and we both knew about it about each other. and sometimes when you're in a different culture and like there's not much English, and it was so much fun because it would just be so light and so much. He loved calling me lazy too. Like he would just giggle and laugh, but you couldn't overdo it. But I do think that there is something about that word that for most of us is like not not a pleasant thing to be called. And I think Jesse really got to the heart of it. It's so important to be careful about it because there are many things to value when you notice drifting that have been happening, actually. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say I'm really good at being lazy,
No, no,
which
no,
is
that's
actually true. And it is maybe a
yeah.
point of pride.
I wish I was better at it, actually. Yeah. Working at it.
And sometimes I don't, always say this, but it's like if it really is persistent, and it's really this, for many people it is. It's like there are eras in our practice where this is the predominant force, and this thing around death is not, it's real, right? It's like, what can you have that relationship of like, oh, maybe this is what it's like to die? Sometimes that gives you a little more energy, to take it seriously. So worth trying. It's great. Yeah, thanks, Marcelo. Samantha.
Hello,
Hello.
Samantha.
I have a question about equanimity and fate, I think, as in F-A-T-E, fate. After several days of practice and being really quiet again, which I adore, tranquility, calm, and I'm trying to use the terms as you directed me, Michele. Equanimity rises, and which I adore even more. And the range of experience becomes so intense throughout a day of practice with really, really painful things, horrible visions or experiences, and just pleasant and simple. But if equanimity is present, then oh my, such a blessing. So thankful. And I am trying to do what you told me, or listen, Michele. When doubt arises and fear of fate or, in karma, I guess. I don't know what word to use, but uncertainty of my ability or the ability to hold to the extremes that reveal itself in my practice. I try to do opposite, because you said, and helps. And then I relax, surrender, receive, engage again. But somehow that thought of fate keeps coming back. So I thought to ask, anything else I should do or don't do?
I guess I'm sure Jesse has a lot to say, but I would ask you, do you have any aversion to doubt?
Sure. I'm not sure. Do you like doubt? But I notice, yeah. And again, that's my point, is if equanimity is present, right? It really depends on what's available at the moment. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes engage, sometimes can't. but it's definitely not up to anything that I'm doing and not doing besides showing up. So I just show up.
Oh, I mean, I think that you're cooking so well that there's not much actually to say other than it's always to be careful of being attached to the equanimity. And so that's why I asked if you're having aversion to the doubt, because of course, if equanimity is present, you won't. But
Right.
it's that sense of like it gets very um, here it gets very subtle and refined, and the purification is in that subtlety and refinement, not the drama.
Right.
Right? So that just it's a lot of for me it's just like reminding you that in that subtlety is a great purification.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're so conditioned for intensity and drama, and as it gets more subtle and more refined, we might not have an idea of the amount of actual liberation work that's actually happening. So that's all that just to be careful again and again and again and again and again and again of attachment to clarity and attachment to
Clarity. Got it.
yeah, right. Or attachment to faith, attachment to anything.
Yep.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I,
yeah.
I mean, I just, it's fun because you said it's fate, F-A-T-E, but it is also about faith, right? And I and I think,
It's fun. Just
yeah, it's not. It is fine. I mean, it's great. But I think it is a deep question, and it's a deep, not just question. It's a deep experience that we all encounter at different points if we're really serious about liberation, right? And you are, and you're just like really going for it, right? In these last period of your life, it's like you're finding so much time to like go on self retreat, and it's like the consistency, the coherence is there, and the the motivation is beautiful and it's very pure, and there's like you're making the commitment and you're doing all of the right things, right? And that you just and we never know the time frame at which the fruits of our efforts are going to
right. Thank
unfold. And you want it to happen in this life. And it's like, I get it. It's like, of course, right? And it's like
I
we would
I'm
never
very
say don't have that ambition. But there is the other side where it's like there are so many forces at play that are out of our control. Whether it happens in this lifetime, whether it happens this retreat, whether it happens whatever, that cannot be the measure by which we determine the value of what you're doing and the inputs. Of course, we need some. I mean, it would be very hard to keep the practice going throughout our lives if we didn't have some feedback that this was going somewhere or that we were improving in some ways. I mean, I think, but many times, many of us have to go through long periods where that lack of clarity around that is right in our faces, right? Where we have to be able to move forward without any evidence, right? And this is a question of faith on some level. It's like, do you trust in the goodness of each moment of bringing your attention to an object, period? Do you trust in the goodness of that, in the
you.
wholesomeness of it, regardless of the time frame that the fruits come to fruition and to ripen? And that is very hard. That is a very serious test for all of us. And you're going through it, and it's hard. And so, like, there's, of course, you may want more evidence, you may want more assurance that this is going to pay off in a time frame that you value or that makes sense to you, and what do you do if you're like, that's never, you're never going to get that assurance. You have no idea. You could wake up tomorrow fully enlightened arahant, and it could not happen this lifetime. That we all have to take that as like a very serious possibility, right? Given the zillions of people who have put a lot of effort over their lifetimes to try to do it, and it didn't happen in that lifetime. But does that mean that the effort isn't there? Is that how we are measuring the value of the effort? And it's like, it can't be, because if it is, then it's not going to lead to it, right? I mean, it is a mechanism by which we are purifying our motivation, and ultimately it's the purifying our motivation that is the key to practice, right, to awakening. And so anytime there is a clinging to a certain outcome, anytime there is an attachment to something in the future, a future anything of ourselves, it's just, there's just attachment. No big deal. It's about recognizing it. And it's about seeing, like, oh, I want this. It's just wanting, or it's just doubt. And like, that's the other side of it. These are big things. They're existential. They're so deep. And there's another level. It's just like, it's just a moment of doubt. It's just wanting. It's just like you want a cookie, you want to get enlightened. It's like whatever. It's just wanting. And so, can you also learn to relate to it that, like, it's like, okay, whatever. Next, pain in my neck.
If equanimity is present, yes.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
why, but that's why it's easy to get attached to equanimity.
Mm.
Because then then we're getting more aversion to the reactiveness if we're getting attached to the equanimity. And it's foolproof. One of the things that's great about this is that it's foolproof.
Like
And right, and that's why this is
Yeah.
happening, is because you're having equanimity. No,
Right.
Samantha, it's like you really have to
No,
get. It's
it's
because
really-
you're having so much equanimity. This is coming up. So it's like, this is how it works. It's a purifying experience. You have the equanimity, and you lose it, and the heart contracts, and that's how this works. So it's working.
Okay,
Isn't it
got
great?
it. Fancy.
Can't get enough of that sugar crisp, sugar crisp, sugar crisp.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Mm. Helen.
Thank you. This is my first time sharing on here. My heart's pounding.
Of course, of course.
But and then there may be a question in here, but my initial idea was I wanted to express my gratitude because I've had in the past week I had something happen where I used the tools that I've been learning here. Michele, you often talk about a karmic knot. You do too, Jesse. But Michele, you talk about compassion without drowning often in the talks on the app. And about 10 years ago, I had to remove someone from my life because I was drowning in my compassion for them. I was just a beginning meditator then. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I couldn't follow through on the track that I was on without losing myself. And that person reappeared in my life last week in a real state where she needed compassion. And I thought, okay, can I do this? And I think it's because I've been listening to the talks about Karuna and thinking about that a lot. And I think that life served it up for me as an exercise. And there's the question. But I wanted you to know that I met with this person under certain parameters that would be so long and not longer. It would be coffee and conversation for an hour, and then I would get to go away, right? And I did it. And I got to feel, I came right up against the edge. There was like an edge, I could feel it, and I set boundaries and I took care of myself. So I just wanted to express how grateful I am, like deep in my heart, that this stuff really works. Thank you.
Very moving. Yeah. The that edge of pure compassion actually is pleasant. It's care, the care about pain is pleasant, and caring about your own pain in these situations is pleasant. And so it's like when when one can't maintain that, which we're all limited in our way, that when we can't maintain it and it becomes um, willpower through aversion to, it's a caregiving, but there's aversion to the pain or trying to fix it or all the ways we get caught in the neediness around it. Um, it's actually, that's what burnout is. You technically you can't burn out with compassion because it's like you would include yourself in it, like, right? Like the boundary is actually compassion. And the boundary is actually compassion for the other person because if you drown, you're not going to be able to be helpful anyway.
Right.
And so it's such a tough, long process for some of us. I include myself in that, to learn how to do this well. It's just if you care, then you're gonna have to figure this out again and again and again and in the ways that we do. And I think the Karuna practice and the equanimity practice particularly is so helpful because the burnout is either that the compassion is only going to one place, right, and not going to yourself. Like it's just getting too, it's out of balance.
Right. Right.
So basically, what you did was have compassion for yourself, which is a very valuable part of the universe, also, right?
Right.
And one that you actually, by birth, are responsible for, right? We're responsible for our own pain. And the equanimity practice teaches us that actually that our responsibility for others, is limited, and that if we don't take responsibility for our own, we actually can't be compassionate for others.
Thank you for that. I think I missed that in early childhood. I burned out taking care of my mom, and that's a missing piece, right?
Now I know it well.
I,
Takes one to
agree.
know, takes one to know one, Helen. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
both of you. And everybody here, the Sangha, I learned so much from you guys. Thank you.
I think I just want to point out something that is so, this the dynamic between our formal internal meditation practice and how we're operating in the world is not always so elegantly and seamlessly kind of experienced or expressed. And so that like when there is a moment where there is something coherent, what conscious or not, right, of like to really get that there is something true, just to say this around that same method of we see that there's a part of let's say that there is something about the method that is true internally as much as it is externally. That there is a part of ourselves, a part of our experience in body or mind that is uh, overwhelmingly painful. We see in the ways in which over the years we have held a relationship with it that may try to be connected but also drowns and can't kind of maintain stability. And so the tool of getting a lot of distance, right? Like realizing that the spiritual path and like the valor, the hero's journey is not always this sort of archetype of like you just going and fighting dragons all the time. There's like, where are you retreating? Where are you finding some sense of stability and security and protection outside of the volatility? For however long that might be, right? It's like 10 years. I mean, these sometimes it's like it's so humbling how long and how much space we need in order to feel like we are strong enough at some point when it arises to be able to come back into relationship. And that is still not like we go back to fighting the dragon. It's like no, it's very boundaried. It's like okay, I will be with this for a very delineated period of time, and I will be very sensitive to what's happening internally in my relationship to this phenomena. And it'll, when it's overwhelming or when I see I've hit that, been at the edge too long, or the intensity is greater than the mindfulness's ability to be with it, or the compassion's ability to be with it, then we withdraw, right? Or we kind of do what you did of separating. And there isn't a sense of like, well, next time I'll go back and go for 2 hours. Or it's like, no, it doesn't, that's not, it's like breaking out of that paradigm where it's like, that's what you've done is the method, right? And that it translates externally into relationships, into our way of being in the world. It's it's just wonderful, that you had an experience where that kind of coherence between how we might approach pain internally and how we might approach it externally, quote unquote, is like using the same principles, and that it's strengthening. It gives you faith. It gives you confidence. And it's wonderful. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Because I want compassion. I want to be able to have compassion in my life. And for a long time, I was an addict and, hiding in delusion because I didn't have it. I didn't want to go near it. So yeah, lots of
Yeah.
healing. Thanks.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Isabel.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi,
Hey, Isabel.
Jesse. Hi, Michelle. I'm new, and it's my first time sharing as well. And it was wonderful. You're guiding us during the meditation. I really could have the anchor of sound or the lower abdomen, and I had my thinking or the thoughts that were on the side ready to pounce. And sometimes they were activated and sometimes not. I was able to have some silence and calm. But if you could help me navigate that difficulty with the thinking, it does make me struggle with depression. And I see the thinking, and I clearly saw in my meditation my aversion to the thoughts and the aversion to the aversion and how strong it is. And then often I say my thoughts are not my enemy, or you're doing the best you can. But it is a big struggle in my life. And if you could have some tools or wisdom, I would appreciate it. Thank you. I hope I made sense.
Totally.
Very much. Michelle, do you want to?
Yeah. Oh.
I'm sure we both have.
It's hard to have the compassion. It's like I want those thoughts to go. I want good
Right, no,
thoughts. I'm
right.
so tired of my thought. I want good thoughts.
One time somebody said to me, not tired enough.
Mm.
Somehow we're not tired enough. But I think it's a lot to do with really facing the power they have over us. And if we have enough at times balance of the awakening factors, that we can actually look at a thought and actually get how powerless they really are. Like they're actually the most ephemeral, insubstantial events, that happen, and yet our Homo sapien conditioning, and particularly modern Homo sapiens with a modern education, that are the way in which we've learned to elevate them to a godlike or goddess-like stature is really phenomenal in terms of how, when you look at how insubstantial they are and how much power they have over us, and we can understand that at times, but often in our mostly busy lives, the way that thoughts appear in and of themselves, like the fact of it is that they're very refined. The content isn't always refined, but the actual form and structure of them are very refined. They're very cloud-like. They disappear quickly. They're moving very fast. But to get that level of, for the witnessing awareness to actually understand the thinking as that refined and substantial, that's a feat. That's a feat in our day-to-day moments. And so that the instruction is often doing everything you can to train the mind to be with other things, because in itself that gives space. And so if you train the mind whenever you're walking around, this is a training. This is years. It was years of like me putting my attention at the bottom of my feet again and again and again, or my hands, walking, bottom of feet, hands, bottom. I mean, just like years, and still work with it, just like, or sound, anything you can do, because you see, even though on one level time and space are very relative, that if the attention is actually going all the way down there from where we perceive thinking, right? We perceive it somewhere here. And if our attention's out there with a sound, or it's down there with the feet, there's like there's a lot of actual space.
Mhm.
That's it. It's that simple. It's really that hard in a way, because it's like you have to have some trust that you're going to get it. But I can assure you that you do. Like you just like, but it takes, you can't do it with an iron fist. It's just that I do feel like some of us have it's a little bit more easier with sound. For some of us, it's more easier with physical sensations. And metta. So metta, compassion, for the thinking, for the human predicament of us all being so susceptible to thinking. That there's a lot of I'm sure Jesse will have a lot to say. I think I'll stick with those two things. That when we have a lot of mindfulness, you can sometimes get that sense of how flabbergasting it is that we're so oppressed by thought, when it's so actually unpowerful, right? That's like a feat in itself. But then a lot of the time we can't do that, but we can understand that thinking is happening all the time, and that's frustrating. But we can start to get strong enough to be away from it. You just stop giving it airtime. It's like the media. If it would stop giving certain beings airtime, we'd all get a break, and that would be like great for everybody. But no, we just keep seeing more of it and more of it. No, it's the same with our thought patterns. It's like the less it gets the headlines, the more it's going to be quiet, because it's not going to work. The insistence of the thought pattern tends to be an emotion we don't want to feel. So we want to be right, or we want to get rid of something, or we're afraid, or that insistent that goes up to thinking. That's the last thing I'll say. Often when thought patterns are tiresome, it's often because we just don't want to deal with the emotion.
Hmm. Well, I do feel numb a lot of the time, and that makes me very sad.
It's a
You
great
know?
defense. Enjoy it while it lasts.
Well, I said that in my meditation. I said, it could be a protection, so it's okay. Just be with it for now.
Yeah, I think Jesse will have some more to say
Okay.
about that.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you,
good.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you sound like you are navigating it, and you have, you have the tools, and it doesn't mean that it's just, that it just falls into place. You still have to go through it, but it's very reassuring to hear the things you tell yourself, right? It's like those are, they seem very healthy. I think they're, just kind of like it is important to it's like it's like what Helen was describing with this friend that you realize you just can't have a healthy relationship with. It's just too entangled, and that you need space from. um, we are that friend most of the time for ourselves. Like, we are the friend that we need space from. And it's very difficult because it's like we keep knocking at the door, and we're also very like identified and addicted to ourselves as like this force. And even in all of the unpleasant ways, there's something very compelling about the solidity of that me-ness. So like Michelle is describing, that sense of how to find space, how to move away, how to anchor away from it is like this such a fundamental tool and kind of range of strategies. And also to remember that moving away to some other object is not just merely a retreat from the difficult, right? That it's not laziness, it's not cowardice, it's not all these things. It's a skillful trying to build mindfulness and concentration with something that's more neutral, right? More that we have more ability to be with. So we're not just retreating to some place and hanging and not and just hiding there. Whether it's the bottom of our feet or sound, we are trying to build mindfulness and concentration. We'll just use of the many things, we'll just say those things, right? We're trying to build mindfulness and concentration with some object or range of objects that we have more facility with. And that is building up the strength, right? It is like building up and refining the capacity of mindfulness and concentration to keep up with objects as they're arising and passing. And so I'm saying this mostly because Michelle's sort of talking in a more technical way, and so it's sort of fun to actually talk about it, not just in the sort of like emotional and kind of like intuitive way that we're relating to ourselves, but also on the technical side to get that if you are building concentration, the ability to bring the attention to an object, observe what's happening there, right? So the bringing the attention to the object is the concentration. It is the trying to maintain it somewhere as change unfolds is concentration. The mindfulness is the observing the change. Oh, watching something arise and pass. And so these two things are both very difficult, and they're very difficult with thoughts. And it's like Michelle's saying, they're so ethereal, they're so intangible, they're so close to nothing, and yet they're so powerful. That skill of how to be with thoughts, not just difficult thoughts, but any thoughts, is something that's why generally speaking, the tradition encourages this starting with the body, starting with the other sense doors, and then working our way towards mind as an object of attention, because it's so fast, we're so identified with it, and it's so ethereal that it's just very hard to observe. It's like technically hard to observe. Never mind that the content is hard. so this sense of like, okay, when we're watching changing sensations, pressure, tension, tightness, warmth, coolness, we watch them arise and pass. We try to keep the attention somewhere for some period of time, even for a few moments. It's like we're building up this ability so that, yes, ultimately thoughts arise and pass, and it doesn't matter what the content is. It's like we are able to, the training is sufficient enough with the technical capacity of the mindfulness, the technical capacity of the concentration, and not a fixed concentration, but a fluid one that's dynamic and sensitive, right? But still able to keep with the changing present moment experience. That a depressive thought, a joyful thought, a confused thought, the it doesn't matter, right? That the capacity to be with them, to see their fleetingness is there. And really, to see it once it's like a miracle. When you see some thought that normally would just totally get you hooked, to see it just sort of vanish, to see it dissipate, it can feel like magic. And just because it happened once doesn't mean, these patterns are very deep and they take a long time to sort of untangle, of course. But that need for them to untangle in order to be free gets loosened. It's like, oh no, we can relate to thought with genuine interest. We have the capacity of the mind, heart to be able to do that. And that really is, and we can train in that way, right? Even with thought, it's like we start to be like, is it okay that there's different qualities of thought? Can we observe them in their own material, not just their content? But just that encouragement that when we are moving away, that is a strategically valuable thing to do, but also it's technically necessary and technically valuable in terms of what we build then with an object that's easier to be with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you.
I have one little more thing to say, which is this might not be an easy thing to do and not something you'd want to do all the time, but maybe a peak experience would be if you could at times be interested in the numbness and to be grateful for it, for protecting you. So that instead of thinking something's wrong, actually something's very right, something's working, has worked very well. And you don't want to just try to get rid of it. You want to be grateful. And in the gratefulness would come a safety. If you're not grateful, your system is not going to soften because it'll feel like you're not going to protect it. But if you're grateful for it, then there's a smidgen, a smidgen of safety.
Yes. Very helpful.
Yeah, and then more gratefulness, there'd be more safety. So that there'd always be that sense that if you need the numbness, it comes back. Thank you. In fact, the gratitude is beyond measure. It's immeasurable for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Starting the year off
Cooking.
full cooking. It's really great. Mm. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, wonderful to be with you, to sit with you, and engage. Yeah, thanks, everyone. Take good care. Hopefully, we'll see you next Sunday.
Mm.